Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video, I want to talk about refinery ships and how they upset the balance of mining as we know it today. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And here's a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and the Armory. So this is something I've been thinking about for a while and I finally decided to put it into a video. The reason I have been thinking about this is that I think that ship refining is going to be released this year or the next, and I think it's going to be a major change to how some of us are mining. I would like to start by saying that in this video I make a few guesses and assumptions, but I will warn you when I do. So first let's start with covering what the flow of mining is now. You start by spawning your mining ship and flying out to the mining area. There you start scouting for suitable deposits to mine. Once you find one, you fracture and extract it. If you still have room for more ore, you go back to scouting. If your cargo hold is full, you fly back to a refinery. Once you're there, you have to go visit the console and set up your refinery job. You can now go back out for more ore, or you can wait until your refinery jobs are done. After that, you have to load the refined materials onto a cargo ship and fly them to the point of sale. Let me visualize this in two different perspectives. First a flowchart and then a list of actions taken. Looking at these two, you're going to see that you're actually not spending a lot of time mining. Most of your time is spent flying, scouting, and setting up refinery jobs. Now, I am excluding waiting for refinery jobs to finish from that statement because that process happens separately and doesn't require you to be online. The fact that mining requires many related activities actually limits the volume of ore you can mine in a given time. So in order to maximize your profit, you have to focus on high value ores, which depending on your luck will cause you to scout for longer. Now, what happens if you bring a refinery ship? In this case, let's consider the Expanse, and let's start by establishing some assumptions based on the Expanse Q&A. Mining ships and refinery ships accept ore saddlebags. But in the Q&A, it is mentioned that players will be able to also store refined materials in the saddlebags. It also says that the Expanse and mining ships actually have two sets of saddlebags stored. One that is attached to the receptacles and another that is deflated and can be attached once the first set is removed. This is important because it affects logistics necessary for mining operations. The Q&A also mentions that the Expanse has an intake receptacle to which players will attach saddlebags and then the contents can be moved elsewhere in the ship. Now, I don't see why we couldn't just swap out the bags attached to other receptacles, but for now, let's assume that you have to use the intake receptacle to receive ore. And finally, ship refining is a process that requires active input from the player, so it can't be done while the Expanse is moving or in quantum or while the operator is logged out. But at the same time, it is much faster than space station refineries. In this case, I am guessing that the refining process will take several minutes instead of a few hours. So what happens to your mining operation if you bring a refinery ship, in this case the Expanse? The start stays the same. Both players need to call up their ship and fly to the location. But things start to get interesting once the storage of the mining ship is full. Then, rather than flying to a refinery, you offload your ore to the Expanse and go back to mining. Here, the pilot of the Expanse is taking on some of the work mentioned in the previous section. They have to manage the refining process and any cargo operations with the ore and the refined materials. They will also be responsible for flying the refined materials to a point of sale. But depending on which mining ship you're using and how much inert material you're picking up, the Expanse can stay around for longer and take on more volume of ore from multiple deposits before it has to head back to sell. With that in mind, we can edit the flowchart and the table from the previous example. We now have two charts that essentially run in parallel. There are some guesses that we have to make here, specifically how long does ship refining take? But let's assume that the Expanse can refine the previous load of ore while the mining ship is mining the next one. Things are now starting to look better. The mining ship is now spending more time mining than doing anything else. But we have transferred the work to the refinery ship. So while you can process a larger volume of ore, you might still lose some time while the refinery ship is dropping off refined materials and picking up new saddlebags. Also, you are adding another person to the group, which creates the first point that needs to be balanced. You have to ensure that 2 players, one flying a prospector and one flying an expanse, will make a similar amount of money as 2 players flying prospectors. But now let's expand our 2-ship example further. Let's add a cargo ship. In this case, any cargo ship that can fit a full saddlebag will work. You can probably see where I'm going with this. The mining ship mines the ore, transfers it to the expanse, and then the refined materials are transferred to the cargo ship. And then the cargo ship flies away to sell them and bring back fresh saddlebags if needed. I think this is the most optimal setup for a few reasons. First, every ship is focused on doing what it was built for, and that extends to the player using it. Rather than one player having to do and be an expert on everything, the players participating can specialize on different tasks. Also, having a refinery and a cargo ship available while you mine technically removes any limits on the volume of ore you can mine and process, which in theory eliminates the scouting step of mining, because you can simply pick up everything, refine it on the spot, and then sell it later in bulk. What I like about this option is that while you need at least 3 people to implement it, it's pretty much infinitely scalable by adding more ships. But as you add more ships, you have to add more people. At which point you have to ask yourself, wouldn't it be easier to bring a larger ship? Larger ships actually open up some interesting options because they tend to have combined functionality. I specifically want to talk about the Arastra, Galaxy, and the Orion. Of course, there will be other ships capable of mining and refining, and some modular ships like the Carrack or the Caterpillar will likely receive a refinery module. But the 3 ships I mentioned we know of for certain. Let's start with the Galaxy, because I think it offers an interesting option for groups that want to increase their capability and remain flexible. The Galaxy can act at once as a refinery and cargo ship and as a crew replenishment platform for longer missions. Now, installing the refinery module onto the Galaxy limits the available cargo space to 64 SCU, but it is my understanding that the onboard refinery outputs standard SCU boxes instead of saddlebags, which makes them a lot easier to store. And the hangar on the Galaxy can serve as a cargo transfer point to offload cargo to smaller ships to be transported for sale. So technically you could have one Galaxy providing refinery services to multiple smaller mining ships, and then also have a smaller cargo ship serve as the supply line bringing refined materials out and bringing in supplies such as catalysts. I see the Galaxy as a good investment for smaller mining orgs where members mostly own smaller mining ships like the Mole or the Prospector, because it will allow them to refine large volumes of ore at the mining location. Also, since it's a large multi-crew ship, the assumption is that it can refine while on the move, which in my mind is a huge upgrade over the Expanse. Which brings me to the Arastra. The Arastra provides an all-in-one platform for mining and refining. Not only can mine and refine at the same time, but it also has a lot of internal and external cargo space to store catalysts, ore, and refined materials. So technically the Arastra allows you to stay out for a very long time and mine without interruption. Of course, this comes at a cost. The ship is pretty expensive to purchase with real money, and without a doubt it will be very expensive in game as well. Also, it seems that the intention is for large ships to have very high upkeep costs, but I feel like this is well balanced with the capability of the ship. Though I think it will be more suitable for long expeditions with limited availability of support services or in distant areas. Also, you will need a stable crew to operate it full time, which adds a people management aspect and might be more difficult to organize for some groups compared to several smaller mining ships supported by an Expanse or a Galaxy, which has more flexibility around people dropping in and out. And that actually brings me to the Orion. The thing is that we haven't had any news on it pretty much since the concept was announced, and some people are wondering if the Arastra makes the Orion redundant. I actually disagree. The Orion is more of a mobile space station than a ship. It's meant to show up to an asteroid field, park there, and use its drones and massive mining equipment to extract large deposits. It also has a large onboard refinery and a lot of storage space. But unlike the Arastra, I don't think it can operate unsupported. It will probably require other ships to bring in supplies and fuel and rotate crew and bring out material, because by design it's going to stay in one place longer than one crew can operate it for. I see the Orion as a ship that will be at the core of a larger mining operation, with multiple types and sizes of mining ships, refineries, cargo ships, and fuel tankers. Also, it is a capital ship, so it will have the associated maintenance costs, so owners and operators will have to make sure that it's out there mining almost constantly. At the same time, depending on where you want to deploy, it's going to require some protection to come along. But I think that the Orion should be in a category on its own. It is designed for a different type of mining than what we currently have, and I believe it will be one of the last ships and gameplay loops to be implemented for mining. I think it will be very interesting to see how players incorporate refinery ships into their mining gameplay. I don't think much will change for solo players, but I imagine there will be players with refinery ships willing to offer services to others for a price. But there are some logistics issues with that. The bigger change will be visible with mining groups and organizations, because with the release of ship refining, they will have to adopt this new process and the underlying logistics considerations. But at the same time, there will be a bit of a balancing act that will need to be done by CIG. Like I said before, they have to figure out a way to make putting 6 players into an Arastra be as engaging and rewarding as having 6 players and prospectors work together. Ultimately, this comes down to the final implementation of ship refining and any last-minute design changes CIG decide to make. But overall, this topic, or rather the logistics of it, have been on my mind for a while. And with that being said, that's all for tonight. What do you think? Will ship refining change the balance? What do you think is the best setup for a mining group? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.